Hey creeps, it's Cameron again, and welcome back to my channel where I talk about books, movies, writing, and all things spooky. Today I have kind of an un-horror related video for you, but still kind of horror related. I'm going to be reviewing Paperback Crush, the totally radical history of 80s and 90s teen fiction by Gabrielle Moss. As someone who grew up in the 90s, children's fiction was detrimental in shaping who I am today. If I had never picked up a Goosebumps book or one of its many ripoffs, you would not be watching this review. I never would have become a voracious reader, I never would have become a writer, I never would have started reviewing books. Who knows where I would be, honestly? I don't. But I do know that I owe a lot to these trashy little paperbacks. So when I found out that Quirk Books was releasing a coffee table style tome all about these books, much in vain of Paperbacks from Hell by Grady Hendrix, which came out last year, I was rabid to get my hands on this thing. Now that I have had time to sit down and digest Paperback Crush from beginning to end, I can say that I appreciate the fact that it exists, but I am not quite as pleased as I expected to be. While Paperbacks from Hell by Grady Hendrix was a celebration of the pulpy underground world of 80s and 90s horror fiction, Paperback Crush is a little bit more of a critical analysis of children's paperbacks from that time period. Now let me make one thing clear about these books. What you see is what you get. As a kid, you didn't pick up a Fear Street book or a Sweet Valley book because you were expecting highbrow literature. You picked these books up because they looked like mindless fun. They weren't the books that were being assigned to you to read in class. These books were meant to entertain you and to make you actually want to read instead of watching MTV or playing with your Tamagotchis. These books are also products of their time. Such should be obvious when you look at the covers and you read the crazy plot synopses. It's pretty clear that these books are not meant to be taken very seriously. Are many things from the 80s seen as problematic by today's worldview? Yes, of course. So should Gabrielle Moss, the author of this book, have to remind us on every paragraph of every page of Paperback Crush why these books are problematic? No. No, she does not. We get it. Okay, reading these books in today's light is not the same as reading modern YA books. They aren't always diverse, they don't have realistic characters, the messages in these books don't always stand the test of time. But were you really expecting them to, honestly? Hell, I don't even expect that from modern YA books. Now, I agree that it is good to point out at the beginning of Paperback Crush, hey, look, these books are not great literature. They're not going to make current political statements because they were written for kids 20 years ago. So as long as you take them at face value and you appreciate them for as ridiculous and entertaining as they are, you're going to feel like a kid again. But instead, it feels like Gabrielle Moss, as passionate as she might be about these books, was absolutely terrified that she would have people read this book and then go back and read some of the old 80s and 90s YA books and then come back and attack her because she recommended problematic books. So instead of looking at these books with a kind of grace and lightheartedness, she goes after the books with a kind of critical sarcasm that never really lets up. For instance, when I got to the final chapter, which was all about horror, which was the chapter I was most excited about, I was frankly exhausted. I mean, there's even a tab in this book labeled The Flaws in Our Stars. Now, I understand wanting to look at these books objectively, but to do that the entire time just kind of makes me wonder what the point of Paperback Crush really is. That being said, Paperback Crush isn't all bad. The layout of the book is absolutely amazing. From the pastel colors to the pattern prints, it looks totally in vein of what these books originally were. Opening it up is like diving into the 80s or the early 90s. It is so nice, and it made me very happy. Also, the chapter on horror, while short, it wasn't as negative as the rest of the book was. And there's also a really nice interview with Christopher Pike, the YA horror author who I admire deeply, and his interviews are so rare. I was really surprised to find an interview with him in this book. In getting up to that point, I was worried that Gabrielle Moss would totally tear Christopher Pike's work apart, but instead she casts him in a very good light, which I appreciated. He really is an author who was ahead of his time. And also, I discovered a ton of books that I probably would never have picked up before, like the Sweet Valley books, for instance. I was always more into the horror side of things when I was a kid, but reading about the Sweet Valley books and Paperback Crush just made me think, wow, these books are far too crazy for me to pass up. So I've already been collecting some of them so that way I can read them here and there. There's also a few Sweet Valley horror titles, which I was very surprised to find out about. So in the end, if you're interested in reading Paperback Crush, don't expect a fun, light journey back in time to your childhood. If that's what you're expecting, then you just need to go to your local thrift store and buy a ton of Goosebumps and Babysitter's Club and Sweet Valley books and just read those instead. But if you're somebody who has a lifelong distaste for tasteless books, then you might find Paperback Crush to be very tasty. So overall, I'm going to give a very, very generous 3 stars to Paperback Crush because I did still enjoy it, even though it made me a little bit angry at times. So if you are interested in reading a copy of this book, of course, I will post links down below in the graveyard where you can go and order a copy. And also, if you have already read this book, please let me know what you thought down below in the comments because I've read a lot of mixed reviews. Some people agree with what I said. Other people think this book is absolutely perfect. So I want to know what you guys think. I need to hear some different viewpoints about it. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Later, creeps.